Israel is deliberately starving Palestinians in Gaza, and this isn't the first time they've done this. So over the past few days, you've probably seen a lot of news about the deliberate starvation of the Palestinians in Gaza. Israel has completely blockaded anything getting into Gaza. Beforehand, they were severely limiting it, letting very little in, especially compared to what it was prior to 2023. And in doing so, they have led to there being no food left in the strip. Beforehand, there was a little bit of food getting in. And even with that, that wasn't enough getting in, but there were stockpiles. There were UNRWA places, there were other UN places, there were other charities and NGOs operating in Gaza that had some stockpiles of foods that they were able to use to help feed people. Since then, Israel has been targeting people working at these places. So World Food Kitchen was one where Israel regularly murdered their workers. There was a flour processing plant owned and operated by the UN. Israel blew it up. There were UN workers, like food workers, who were killed by Israel. So they were deliberately trying to do what they could to ensure Palestinians suffer and starve. And if you look at this piece from The Guardian, it's an opinion piece, it just opens with, "It has been more than 30 hours since I last ate. At times, I go as long as 2 days without food. For most people around the world, the word hunger is a fleeting feeling, easily fixed with a trip to the kitchen or a nearby store. Saying, 'I'm hungry' is routine, almost meaningless. But imagine if every time you felt hungry, there was nothing to eat. No food, no relief, just emptiness. This is my daily reality in the Gaza Strip for over a month." Israel has deliberately done this, and this isn't the first time they've done this. This time they've been able to completely stop any food entering. There's people saying the shelves stand empty. Hunger was never part of our lives before. We used to cook the most delicious meals, order our favorite foods, and enjoy them without a second thought. Now remember those days, not just as part of the past, but like they belong to another world entirely, a world that was safer, kinder, and much more beautiful. People in Gaza were already they were getting food, but even though this lady's talking about how they were able to cook food, they were able to cook food because there were services to be able to do that. There were external sources that were helping them get the food in. Israel has deliberately cut off all of those sources. Imagine in the UK if we were unable at all to import our food, unable to transport food anywhere. Israel also has targeted the arable land in Gaza. There's not a lot, but there was some, and Israel completely obliterated it. So now in the UK, there are no farms and you're unable to import any food. Of course, the people will struggle. They won't be able to buy as much food, and then it gets to a point where you can't get any food, and any chance of you getting that food, you will be killed. You will be attacked. We saw that Freedom Flotilla that was trying to get supplies to Gaza was bombed near Malta by Israel with the help seemingly from the United States. And this is what's happening right now, and it's not the first time this has happened. So if we look here, this is from 2024 from Human Rights Watch. Israel imposed starvation deadly for children. So children were starving in 2024 in April. Israeli government's use of starvation as a weapon of war has proven deadly for children in Gaza, said Omar Shakir, Israel and Palestine director of Human Rights Watch. Israel needs to end this war crime, stop the suffering, and allow humanitarian aid to reach all of Gaza unhindered. This was last April. This was about 13 months ago. And they were forced at some point to allow some food in, and now they've resumed not doing it. Look at these pictures. This is a child starving, clearly malnourished, and this is getting worse more and more. International humanitarian law prevents the starvation of civilians as a method of war. The Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court provides that intentionally starving civilians by depriving them of objects indispensable to their survival, including willfully impeding relief supplies, is a war crime. Israel is doing this. Israel is deliberately blocking that food. But even then, they were doing this back in 2023. This is an article from Human Rights Watch from 2023. Israel's starvation uses a weapon of war in Gaza. Evidence indicates civilians deliberately denied access to food, water. And just going from the bullet points of the entire article, I'll link them down below. The Israeli government is using starvation of civilians as a method of war in the Gaza Strip, which is a war crime. Israeli officials have made public statements expressing their aim to deprive civilians in Gaza of food, water and fuel, statements reflected in Israeli forces' military operations. The Israeli government should not attack objects necessary for the survival of the civilian population, lift its blockade of the Gaza Strip, and restore electricity and water. But Israel is still doing this, 2 years on. And just to get in, this was done before that. Israel used calorie count to limit Gaza food during blockade. So the last time they did a blockade, not the last time, a previous time they've done a blockade between 2007 to 2010, I believe it was here, Major Guy Ibnar, the Israeli military spokesman, says the calculation based on a person's average requirement of 2,300 calories a day was meant to identify warning signs to help avoid humanitarian crisis, and it was never used to restrict the flow of food. Well, clearly it was, because they were using these calculations to just about ensure there was enough food going into Gaza to wipe their hands clean of it. And you were here, US diplomat Kaba by WikiLeaks last year quoted Israeli diplomats as saying they wanted to keep Gaza's economy on the brink of collapse. Israel, this food calc made in January 2028 applies average daily as 2,279. And it's just Israel before what, even here, look, Israel also used baffling secret guidelines to differentiate between humanitarian necessities and non-essential luxuries. The outcome was that military bureaucrats enforcing the blockade allowed frozen salmon and low-fat yogurt into Gaza, but not coriander and instant coffee. This is back in 2010. This article is from, and it's they have very deliberately then were allowing just enough food in. And even here, international flotilla on May 10th, Gaza, Israel did a deadly attack on that, and they tried to do another one this year. But even at this point in 2010, they were deliberately trying to give just enough food. But now they are just not allowing any food. This is even the right one. This is from 2 years ago. Just now they're not allowing any food in at all. Nothing. Children in Gaza Strip have begun to die of hunger. Unlike adults, they cannot endure such suffering. I think of them imagining the food they long for, but can't have. And the thoughts of it is heartbreaking. They are deliberately starving people to death, including the children. This is an article from a few days ago on Al Jazeera. At least 57 Palestinians starved to death under Israel's blockade of Gaza. This was from May 3rd, so it's about 6 days ago as of recording this. And look at this. Gaza's government media office said on Saturday that most of the victims were children, as well as the sick and elderly, condemning the continued use of food by the Israeli occupation as a weapon of war, and urging the international community to exert pressure on Israel to reopen the borders and allow an aid. But they won't do it because they see they will make money off this. The international community, for the most part, particularly the global north or Western Europe and the United States, are happy to see these people starve to death because the politicians themselves will be enriched by this, because they have ties economically to Israel. They either are getting money from the Israeli lobby, which oftentimes is just, a Ponzi scheme of your own money going to Israel and coming back to you, or it's investing in Israeli companies to make a buck potentially after you finish politics, or even whilst you're in politics in places like the United States. Having to see children starving every single day, and again, this isn't a thing that's exclusive to Gaza. We see mass starvation happening in places in Africa where the West is also interfering, places like Congo and Sudan, where the West or their allies in the UAE are deliberately starving the population to try and force them to basically submit to their will. And it is an age-old tactic of aggressors and occupiers, is to starve the people either into submission or to genuinely kill them through starvation so you don't need to deal with them. It is disgusting. It is abhorrent. And any sense of opposing this is being criminalized here in the West. In the United States, you get deported. Here in the UK, they've started to make it extremely hard to protest it, and they've started arresting people as well for organizing protests or even talking about organizing protests. It is just disgusting, abhorrent behavior from the West, and it's just unfortunately been their modus operandum for most of modern history and even like medieval history. It is appalling.